Irashaimase. Hello and welcome to Fitaurus Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fitaurus. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this Saturday we have Thunder Force AC, another excellent Sega Ages port for the Switch. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. Originally developed by Technosoft in 1990, Thunder Force AC is the arcade port for Thunder Force 3, which came out for the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive earlier in that same year. Thunder Force AC would later be ported to the Super Nintendo and released as Thunder Spirits. So that's one of the ways you can kind of know why Thunder Spirits is that different from Thunder Force 3. So right off the bat, I can tell you this title has an excellent taste. If you're a fan of the Thunder Force series, if you're a fan of Sega Genesis shooters, or if you're a fan of shoot 'em ups in general, this is one that I personally feel should be part of your collection. It is an excellent port, even if Thunder Force 3 might be slightly superior to AC. That could be a little bit debatable, but this is definitely one that, if you're a shoot 'em up fan, it belongs in your collection. At the time of this recording, it's only available on the Japanese eShop, but it is planned for worldwide release on May 28th, so mark your calendars. Jumping into the main menu, we see that things are set up like other Sega Ages releases. We've got the arcade mode and kids mode available for playing the title. I'll go over the differences there in a little bit, but I want to talk real quick of one of the features I love about this one, and one of the features I loved about Lightning Force as well. So one of the things that M2, the developer of the Sega Ages series, has done is they're not just porting the titles, but they're actually adding extra features to those titles, and I really love that. Thunder Force is a series that's always been near and dear to my heart, as it's one of my more formative shoot 'em ups from my earlier gaming life. And to see the presentation that it has here, I just love this. So like Lightning Force, we have different ships available. Once you complete or have played the game, it'll unlock additional ships. You've got the Sticks, which is the original Thunder Force AC Thunder Force 3 ship, but you also have these ships that come from Thunder Force 4 or Lightning Force, the mass production model of the Sticks, as well as the fighter you play as in Thunder Force 4, the Rhinox, which M2 did such an awesome job of implementing the Rhinox into Thunder Force AC. It feels like it fits in perfectly. But I also love the presentation that they added into this version that wasn't present in Lightning Force. So we have this little image of the ship itself, plus this description. This highly maneuverable fighter craft is the culmination of the Galaxy Federation's exhaustive R&D. It may be small, but it packs enough firepower to rival a massive battleship. I really love just those small little blurbs that they have about the various ships. It's just a really nice touch. Anyway, moving on to the game itself. Arcade mode, we get this awesome warning. This game is to be used only in Earth. So I'm almost wondering if that wasn't there in the original ROM, but if it was, kudos Technosoft, that's awesome. So we get this neat little startup screen here. I'm going to throw up the Thunder Force 3 one as well, so you can just see some difference. Thunder Force 3 released for the Sega Genesis, whereas Thunder Force AC released on the Sega System C2 arcade board. They're very similar, but the arcade board does have more RAM available, so there are more colors, just something to keep in mind. Starting the game. Unlike Thunder Force 3, we're not taken to a level select, rather we're just dropped into the first stage right off the bat. That's one big difference between the arcade version and the home version, Thunder Force 3. Your mileage may vary on whether that's something that you like or care about, but it's just one of those small details that is notable. And it also explains why Thunder Spirits for the Super Nintendo ended up being just that different. So let's talk about the gameplay here. It's standard Thunder Force fare, so in the past I have covered Thunder Force 5 as well as Lightning Force. We have a rather small selection of as far as like button presses are concerned, but as the description says, we've got massive firepower. So the sticks we've got basically 3 things we can do in addition to moving around the screen. We can shoot, which we're doing with quite a bit of gusto. We also have the ability to increase or decrease our speed. We can start on, well, at least on the Genesis version, you can set your default speed. On this, I do believe we start at 2, and then we can change that all the way up to 4, and then it loops back around to 1. There are certain cases, like avoiding those missiles there, where it's useful to be on our fastest speed, but generally, at least I prefer it to be on speed 2. In addition to that, we have the ability to switch between weapons. We start off with 2 by default, the twin fire and the backfire. But it's possible to upgrade those weapons, and indeed at this point we have. So our first upgrade for the twin fire takes it to the Sever, which is just an awesome laser beam. We also have our back shot, which upgrades to the Lancer. This is really useful because even if you're using it in this mode, the forward firing beam fires at a fast enough rate that you can take care of the enemies in front without much problem. In the first stage, we've also picked up the fire, which happens to be a set of missiles which skim the ground above and below, and especially with the upgraded weapons, bosses, not a problem. Stage 1 down, and we move on to stage 2. So real quick, let's just take a quick look at how that stage looks on the Genesis. This particular footage is recorded from the Genesis Mini, and really I think it looks great, although you can see some of the differences in color. And here's the current stage that we're on, also on the Genesis, and now back to the Sega Ages release. So you can see there are more colors here, but considering like the game itself was a technical marvel for when it released on the Sega Genesis, and it just still to this day stands out as just a great looking and great playing shoot 'em up. So yet another weapon, the Wave. This is one of my favorites to use as it does pierce through the enemies. So one thing that happens when you lose a life, unfortunately, depending on the settings you have and also the gameplay itself, you can actually stock up quite a bit of lives playing through Thunder Force AC. But one thing that does happen when you lose a life is you happen to lose the weapon you're currently equipped on. Or, in the case of the twin shot and the back shot, you'll lose the upgraded version you happen to be or have equipped. Something that can be kind of devastating, but we can recover. The twin shot and the back shot are still useful, even if it's not possible to take down enemies quite as quick. Let's grab that one up. Always remember, if you happen to see a replica of yourself, grab it. It'll give you an additional life. Now here we pick up one of the best weapons in the game, in my opinion, the Hunter, and we lose it right away. That's a bit unfortunate. So the Hunter is a set of homing shots that can be really powerful, especially when we have the options that circle around the ship, called the Claw. There we just obtain a shield. This will protect us from several shots before it is exhausted. Not having the Hunter here is a little bit problematic, as this boss is a bit trying to take out. The weak point is on the top, and that's one thing that I do miss about Thunder Force 3. When you went to a new area, there was this brief screen that showed you your target, basically the ship that the boss that we're targeting, and it included just a description of the weak point. I really appreciated that, and that is one thing I miss about Thunder Force AC. So one thing that's notable about Thunder Force AC versus Thunder Force 3, there are a few stages that were changed from the original. Two of the stages, which if you started on the default stage would be stages 4 and 5, are changed from the home release. The bosses are basically the same. Note to self, avoid those exploding gas clouds. Anyway, the bosses for those stages basically remain the same, but the stages themselves have been changed. In some cases, that might not necessarily be a bad thing, as those weren't the favorite stages from Thunder Force 3 anyway, but just something that's interesting and unique to note. And while we're talking about differences between the versions, there would be some additional changes made to Thunder Spirits, where they changed up some of the later stages and the final boss as well. So, back to talking about the Sega Ages version though, let's pop back to the main menu and just load up. We'll be seeing the same stage again, but load up the Rhinox just so we can see how that plays. And we'll talk a little bit about the differences between arcade mode and... Of course, it's not necessarily an arcade perfect port if we have additional ships like this present, but one thing that the kids mode adds is if you die, you don't lose the weapon you have selected, which makes it actually very overpowered. Once you pick up the hunter, save for a couple bosses where it doesn't properly home in on the weak point, there's not much reason to use anything else. So with the Rhinox here, we have a very similar set of equipment, a twin shot, a back shot, but then our upgraded versions are different. For the back shot, it's this railgun. And for the ground skimming weapon, instead of the fire, we have the snake. And once we pick up the upgraded twin shot, it's this cool looking blade. So in addition to the extras that I said, as far as adding in the extra ships and even the one-ups have changed to match, another fun feature is they've changed the display mode, once again giving us a cabinet version. So the screen looks a little bit smaller here, but it does give you a good feel of playing it in an arcade. It's not quite the same as the G-Lock version where the screen is moving around, but I do still appreciate what we have here. So, once again, the flavor of this title is excellent. It's one that I can highly recommend. So what kind of minus flavors do we have here? I do have a couple complaints, some having to do with Thunder Force itself, and some having to do with the port. So one thing I feel, the arcade music and sound balance feels a little bit off, and I wish that there was options to control the volume of those separately so you could turn up the music. Though not quite as awesome as the FM synth, well, they're both FM synths, but not quite as awesome as the Genesis version. Thunder Force AC still has really great music. And not as much of a complaint, but that is kind of an easy shoot 'em up compared to other titles, and especially if you're playing it on kids mode. Well, kids mode really does make the title a cakewalk, and one continued clears will not be a challenge on that mode. Another little minor, this is more like just kind of a wish. It would have been great if they could have had Thunder Force 3 on this collection as well, so you could compare the arcade version as well as the original version. And it's actually interesting that this is one of those shoot 'em ups where the home version came before the arcade release. But then, plus flavors, I really appreciate all the small little extras that they've put into this release. From little things like this arcade cabinet to the addition of the extra fighters in the game itself. Just things like that really show a love for the title and like an interesting spirit of experimentation as well. And then there's just that fun of playing a classic shoot 'em up like Thunder Force. It just really is special to me, and it's great to see that this particular release turned out so well. Definitely, highly recommend it. Alright, that'll just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for coming out and joining me this week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.